Your electricity price massively contributes to your success in crypto mining. And that's of course because a cheaper price per kilowatt hour means there's a bigger margin between the value of the crypto that you mined and what you actually paid for the power used to mine it. And that's why over 3 years ago, I said this in a video. So shop around for a better electricity rate if you can, and also see if you can get a fixed rate. Essentially suggesting you try to lock in the cheapest power rate possible at that time. And by the way, that was before all of this crazy inflation we've had with power prices going through the roof in the past couple of years. So I actually did take my own advice back then, and I locked in what was the best available contract for me at that time, which was a 3-year fixed rate of around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And I've been on that contract since then. Unfortunately though, those 3 years are now over. So I called up my available power companies to negotiate a new rate, and well, it seems the best they can offer me now is around 18 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, I know that's still cheaper than what many of you have, but to be fair, it's also not exactly cheap enough for an at-home mining farm to be cost effective. So if you're wondering why I haven't posted a video in a couple of weeks, it's essentially because I've just been obsessing over what the next step for my mining farm is going to be at this point. Well, that, and also taking a bit of time off to see family over the holidays and stuff like that. So in this video, I'm going to take you through my step-by-step plan for how I'm going to lower my power rate further than that 18 cent rate that the power companies quoted me. Because you can always get cheaper power, and you never have to just settle for the price that the power companies tell you. I'm gonna touch on some stuff that I'm willing to bet like 99% of you have never even heard of in this video. And my hope is that with me sharing my steps, maybe you can pick something up that might help you in your situation if you're in the same kind of boat as me with having expensive power. And on that note, at the end of this video, I'm also going to give you the perfect solution for getting cheap power for mining. But I'll also explain why I personally can't use that solution, unfortunately. But of course, you totally can. Alright, so my first step to lower my electricity price is actually that I'm going to do nothing. Don't worry, I'm gonna explain. What I mean is that any sort of quick fix is most likely also going to be a temporary one. And as we all know, mining is usually best seen as a long game type of strategy. So that's why I'll be looking at more long-term, bigger scale solutions in this video. You know, stuff that will permanently lower the power rate for your mining farm. Another reason why I'm not looking for a quick fix is because in the near future, going from my previous price of 13 to 14 cents to 18 cents per kilowatt hour isn't going to change things that much for me. At my previous power price, essentially only my L7 and Jazz miner were profitable, and that's pretty much going to still be the case at my new power price too. And adding to that, in the past few years at my 13-14 cent power rate, my GPU and CPU rigs have often been under or just around break even in terms of profitability. The exception to that has been, of course, during those short periods where profitability pumps due to a new coin launching or other things like that. And to be fair, we have seen quite a bit of that during this bear market. But my point is that, well, that's also basically going to stay the same for me at the new price. In terms of GPU and CPU mining, I'm going to go from it being mostly unprofitable except during profitability pumps at my old rate, to it still being mostly unprofitable except during profitability pumps at this new higher rate too. And on top of that, my perspective is that if this, right now, is essentially the start of the bull market, meaning mining profitability is about to go up like it has during previous bull markets, then an 18 cents per kilowatt hour power price is probably going to be fine for this year. And instead, I'm going to be looking at what my options are for, as I already mentioned, a more long-term solution for my mining farm, going beyond 2025. So what are those long-term solutions? Well, usually my first advice to people is to start by making sure you've done everything you can in your current situation. That includes negotiating your rate with the power companies, looking into any potential tax breaks or rate cuts due to being on agricultural land, qualifying for industrial power rates, or anything like that in order to lower your existing power rate. And of course, make sure to understand your power bill too, because in most places there are actually two bills. One for the supply, which is the company that actually produces the power, and then one for the delivery, which is essentially the company that owns and maintains the power grid in your area. On top of that, there's also optimizing your actual mining farm too. For example, if the reason you are unprofitable is because you have old inefficient hardware, then you might want to just sell your old hardware and invest in better, more energy efficient mining equipment, because that's going to be both easier and also a lot more cost effective than taking drastic measures to get ultra cheap power in order to just make your very inefficient mining gear be slightly profitable again. But I've essentially already done all of that, and I'm going to assume that you have too. So that leaves us with what I believe are the two main options for getting cheap power: producing your own electricity or finding cheap power somewhere else. And those are the two avenues that I will be exploring for my own farm. Starting with producing your own power. Now, when people hear this, their first thought always goes to solar panels. And that's not necessarily a bad option at all, depending on how much sun there is in your area and of course how cheap you can get a solar system for. But I want to open your eyes to the fact that there are actually other options for producing your own power too, if you're just willing to look for them, of course. Now, I'm just starting out in my quest for getting long-term cheaper power too, but I've already come across some interesting other alternatives here. For example, I found out about what I think would be called a wind turbine cooperative. And the way I understood it, again, I haven't looked that far into it yet, is that you put down a, to be fair, pretty substantial upfront cost for buying a part share of an actual wind turbine. But after that, you are now a part owner of that turbine and the power that it produces. You do still end up paying a price per kilowatt hour of power that you use, but it's heavily discounted compared to market rate. And my understanding is that that price is mostly used to cover maintenance of the turbine and any operational costs. Also, add to that the fact that any excess power produced by the turbine is sold to the grid, and the profit from that is split between you and the other owners. This all essentially leads to the supply side of your power bill being, well, essentially very close to free. And of course, in the future, you are also able to sell your part share of the turbine onto someone else again, most likely for at least the same price that you bought it for, or maybe even for more than that. Now, I'm willing to bet that most of you have never even heard of such a thing before, and that's kind of my point. Don't give up if you have expensive power. There are solutions out there. As for me, producing my own power is tempting, and I definitely will look into even more options for it. I don't think solar is an option for me personally, because we don't really get enough sun here for it to be a price-effective option for me. And while the wind turbine thing does sound good on paper, in the end it only lowers the supply side of your power bill, and a big issue for me is that the delivery side of the bill is really high in my area. Adding to that the fact that buying into a wind turbine cooperative comes with a pretty substantial upfront cost, I think I'll be better off putting that money elsewhere. And that leads me to the second option for getting cheap electricity, which is finding cheap electricity somewhere else. This can look in a lot of different ways. Perhaps you have friends or relatives that live in areas with cheap power who are willing to put up some rigs for you as long as you cover the power cost. Or maybe there's a local warehouse that wouldn't mind getting the heat from the mining rigs in exchange for you getting to use a bit of their power. Or anything else along those lines. You never know until you ask around, right? The possibilities are endless, and some of you might get really lucky in these regards. However, I kind of have something else in mind for myself. Because the main point of this second option of finding cheap power somewhere else is to, actually find that cheaper power, right? And as it turns out, in most countries, including the one I'm in, the cost of electricity varies enormously depending on where you live. And after spending a good amount of time researching power companies and grid operators in different areas, turns out that while 18 cents per kilowatt hour is pretty much the best rate that I can get where I am, fixed rates of as low as like 7 cents is very possible in other parts of the country. Now, I can't exactly just up and move my whole family to a completely different town just to get cheap power for mining. But I'm sure there are options for things that I can do, and that is what I'll be looking into and researching more. Usually a big reason for why power is so cheap in these areas is because it's close to a power plant, and they tend to build power plants where people generally aren't living very much. And in those areas where people generally don't really want to live, property tends to be pretty cheap. So step one is looking into what actual options are available there. Perhaps I'm able to get a really cheap piece of land somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like build a shed on it and have power drawn to it. You know, set up a little off the grid, but not actually off the grid mining farm in the middle of nowhere. And if you think that sounds crazy, I actually have a real life friend who did exactly this. And the land, work on the shed, and getting a 240 volt power line drawn to it only cost him a total of like 9 grand or something like that. And I mean, you'd make that money back in no time with how much you'd be saving on your power bill. Of course, not to mention all the extra crypto you could now afford to mine. However, it technically is 9 grand down the drain, unless of course you're able to sell that piece of land again later. But moving on, of course building a shed in the middle of nowhere isn't the only option, and I am going to look into some other stuff too, like renting a small commercial space, buying a little holiday cottage, the list goes on and on really. For me, I guess my only requirement is that it has to make long-term financial sense, whatever it is that I end up doing, and for it to not be, of course, too expensive. You know, there's no point spending tens of thousands of dollars that I'll never get back just to save 10 cents on my power rate. That said though, right now I do kind of love the idea of getting a cheap holiday cottage in an area with really inexpensive power, then use it for mining during the next 2 potential market cycles just to stack like an insane amount of coins, and then sell the cottage for a profit 8 years later or so. Because that's how a property investment works, right? You just buy something and then it only ever goes up in value, right? Now, the big prohibiting factor with that potential plan is obviously the initial cost of just actually flat out buying a property. And really, if that's going to be an option or not, well, it does kind of come down to the bags I've been mining during the past bear market here and what I end up being able to sell that for. And just to be clear, we're not talking hundreds of thousands here, more like a few tens of thousands. But I'm genuinely super curious about what you guys think of the stuff I've mentioned so far in the video, and if you have any other unorthodox ways of getting cheap power. So please leave that down in the comments below. I actually really look forward to reading it all. But now, in the intro, I did promise you guys a quick and easy solution, and it's definitely way more convenient than buying a cottage in another part of the country. And don't worry, I haven't forgot about that. But first, this. My personal strategy in mining is to have a diverse farm. A big part of that is having ASIC miners for multiple different algorithms. Not only does that mean less risk as you're not putting all eggs in one basket, but you're also exposed to the profitability of multiple different coins, which could be very advantageous. And with that in mind, Dogecoin miners are always on my radar as they let you merge mine multiple coins without using extra power, with more mining rewards from new coins being added regularly. The DG Home 1 is probably the best bet there for something silent, suitable for mining at home, which also runs on 120 volt. However, in terms of full-size ASICs, I'm currently looking at the DG1 Plus from 𝗲𝗡𝗥, because I think that probably offers the best balance between power efficiency and value for money currently. But where can you get these miners from? Well, why not check out this video's sponsor, Coin Mining Central, which is an online store for ASIC miners with an over 6-year track record of overwhelmingly positive customer reviews. They have all the latest and most profitable miners, from silent home miners to full-size ASICs. They can even provide immersion cooling systems and offer great bulk pricing on ASICs. Based in the UK, Coin Mining Central prioritizes great customer support, strict personal detail protection, and free worldwide shipping on all miners with no additional payment fees at checkout. You can also utilize their loyalty and referral programs to save on your next purchase. Plus, use my link down in the video description and code SEB at checkout for a roughly $130 discount on every miner in your order priced over £1,000. So check out that link below together with the code to save on your purchase. Now, it might come as no surprise that the obvious solution here is just to get your mining equipment hosted. Essentially what that means is instead of setting up your hardware at home with your expensive power, you just send it off to a company that specializes in setting up and maintaining crypto mining facilities, and they just run it there for you. You then just pay them a fixed fee for the power, usually around 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Easy peasy, right? Now, the reason I personally don't want to do this is, well, as you might have noticed, I make YouTube videos about mining, and I kind of want to have direct physical access to my mining rigs so that I can film them for videos and just stuff like that. I also just kind of think it makes for better videos if I actually have to, physically wrestle with the hardware myself. That said though, hosting is very likely going to be a great option for you if you have expensive power. And if you want to learn more about it and how it all works, I actually have a full video interview with a guy who not only has visited a bunch of these facilities, but also has his own miners hosted at over 4 of these companies. You can check that video out there. So, see you there. Thank you for watching.